Gentlemen, welcome to Destiny Education Hangin with the Fellas podcast with your host, Twana.
Hey, gentlemen, it is, I would like to say 2:00 on Tuesday, but this is the month that we are testing out a new time frame. And so originally we were going to go live at 5. Now we're going live at 7 p.m. So welcome to Hanging with the Fellas. It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, or should I say 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I am so glad again to be here with you guys. You know, we're in the middle of our series, Finding the Right One. And today we're going to go a little deep. We're going to go pretty deep. So you may have questions. Please put them in the comments below. If you fall in love with this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you're reminded every single time Hanging with the Fellas goes live. You ready to get started? Here we go. Finding the right one is always going to begin with you and understanding you and how you work. It is not anything that's external. And it's actually interesting because if we go back in Genesis, when the fall came, Adam said to God, it's that woman that you gave me. The reality was not so. The reality was that Adam had something that he wanted to hold on to, and he wasn't necessarily willing to give that up. But he also didn't want to fully take the blame because he was afraid by that point of what was getting ready to happen. God, of course, did not accept his excuse and let him share in the punishment that was coming. But that's not what we're talking about. The reason I bring that to you is because as we go through this, I want you to keep that in mind as I explain some things that the Bible clearly lays out about how and what men are truly looking for when you are in the process of trying to find the woman you want to spend the rest of your life with. Because remember, we're supposed to, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. That's important for you to remember. That's in Proverbs. I believe it's Proverbs 18 and 22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. There's a blessing that comes with marriage automatically. As a matter of fact, more men find that they make more money when they're married than they do when they're single. That's part of the blessing of marriage. God always makes accommodation for you to be able to support your family, but you've got to be able to deal with that mindset. And so one of the things that people don't talk about when it's time to find the right one, especially with you gentlemen, is that you have to start with understanding who you are internally, understanding your weaknesses, your shortcomings, your strengths, your talents, all of that. And here's why. If I don't understand my trigger points, then when my spouse comes and inevitably tromps all over that trigger, it starts to develop a root of bitterness. And so now you begin to see her in a way that's colored. And when I say colored, what I mean is that your vantage point of her changes, because now it feels like she's constantly attacking you, when in reality, she is tromping over things that she has no concept of and things that you haven't communicated to her. So let me give you an example. I have this one gentleman that I work with from time to time, and he's a total mess, and he is triggered by everything. This man is completely toxic, and let me tell you, this poor man is so badly broken. I don't know if there's any fixing. Like, he is one of God's massive miracles. I'm not really sure how this man has made it this long, but he's extremely emotional. And the reason he's extremely emotional is because he will not deal with the pains of his past. He won't acknowledge them. He won't discuss or go through or work on what damage those pains did to him as he was growing up. Too many of you are carrying those types of pains. And so when you choose not to work on them, what you end up doing is you creating yourself In your head, you create a dissonance that everybody is out to get you, everybody's trying to hurt you. Your thoughts become extremely negative, extremely toxic, and it makes it very hard for people to get to know you or to be around you. Now, with this gentleman that I was using as the example, one of the things he does is he sets people up for failure. And so he'll say, I don't like it when you do this. And so you don't do that. And then he gets mad because now he doesn't like that you do this, but he also didn't like that you did that. You're dealing with a moving target. You can't win that way. And too many of you are out here having these moving targets that women can't hit because it's constantly moving, it's constantly adjusting. And then you're wondering why your relationships are falling apart. And understand this, it's not specific to your wives. It also happens with your kids, your siblings, your parents. You have moving targets across the board and people can't hit them. And that makes them want to stay away from you. Does that make sense? And so this is something that is not in the original design of man. This is something that has metamorphosed and become a bigger problem as we have moved further from how we were originally created. And the more that we move away from the Father and we inundate ourselves with religion instead of understanding the Bible for what it is, these problems exacerbate. They become larger and bigger, and things that ultimately we reach a point where we just don't know how to address this. You with me? So, here's what I want you to understand today, and here's one of your major takeaways is how God designed you and what that design, the purpose of that design is when it comes to not only structuring your life, but your family, your kingdom, and building that kingdom. Are you with me? If you recall, in Genesis 1:27, we learn that God created Adam and Eve at the same time. He created them male and female. So the plan was already in place for there to be a man and then a wombed man or a woman, right? That does not mean we think the same. What it does mean is that the major difference between the two is physiological. She has mammary glands to produce food and a womb to carry a child, okay? Those are the physiological differences. Now, also, she's not anywhere near as strong as a man's going to be, period. No matter how tall she is, how heavy she is, she's not ever going to be as strong as a man. You guys have a different build physiologically. But again, that's the physical. Remember, the physical of everything in life is always the bottom. It's the bottom rung. It's not the top rung. We're working off of the top rung today. So when we go into Genesis, what we find is that God brings the man to the front first. He forms him from the ground, it says, and he breathes into his nose. Now, some people think that's a contradiction because in 127, it says he created them. And then in Genesis 2, it says he gave him life. I don't understand the difference. Well, the difference is this. In Genesis 127, the plan was set for a man and a woman who were going to take care of the earth. In Genesis 2, they come to life. And now you get to see what happens when they're actually in action. Now, Adam was the first to be given that breath of life. Adam was. And people often mistake, especially through religious teachings, not biblical teachings. Make sure you keep the distinction. Through religious teachings, people think that that makes men superior in how all of this works. That's not the case. The fact of the matter is that the husband and the wife fell at the same time. I want you to always remember this. Adam was right there with his wife when she ate of that fruit. Otherwise, she didn't have to go hunt him down and find him to say, here, take a bite. No, he was right there. At no point did he say, no, let's not do that. This is important to remember because what that tells you is that both of you are fallen. It also tells you, remember, we're dealing on an upper level, that the two of you together will either make or break each other. You will either be able to grow together or you're going to tear each other apart. And this is something that comes as a warning for us and something that we need to look at, okay? Being the first created doesn't mean that Adam was better. It just means that he has the greatest level of responsibility. So, as gentlemen, you are responsible for what happens in your household. The beauty of that is that you also have the power to save everyone that's in your household. Now, I'm not talking about bringing them to Christ. What I am talking about is making sure that they're okay. Ultimately, you will probably bring your family to Christ, but you may not be alive when that happens. That's a whole nother subject and very different. But I want you to always understand that you have 100% ability to fix everything that's broken in your household. It always will begin with you. If you don't fix yourself, you're not going to be able to make anybody in your house better. So, in order to find the right woman for you, you first have to begin to understand that you are responsible for the household. You are the head of that household. You are looking for a woman who can work in concert with you. That means closely together to create the vision that you have. Well, as always, if you don't have a vision, you can't create, you're going to frustrate your wife because she's naturally designed to bring about your vision. And believe me when I tell you that there are a million women who would listen to this and would want to argue vehemently, but I have yet to find a woman who does not find the right man for her and fall right in line with creating his vision. And all that stuff she was talking when she was single, yeah, she ain't talking that no more. Now all of a sudden it's like, no, we love, we this, we that. So you got to ignore the noise, okay? Because the noise only lasts until she finds that right man. And when she finds that right man, she falls right in line every single time without fail. And the times when she doesn't fall in line, it's usually because she's not the right one. And there will be other things that go along with that. When it comes time to figuring out what you want in a woman, you have to go to Proverbs 31. You have to, because it spells out what the wife of noble character is. And she's not someone who sits at home and eats bonbons on the couch all day. She's out making things happen. She's evaluating property. You can give her an assignment and know she's going to take care of it. She's going to knock it out. She's going to do it her way. She's going to add her little flair to it. Give her the task and let her get it done, because the fact of the matter is that the two of you may not work in the exact same way. And what happens is that you try to control what she's doing, and then she tries to control the way you do it, and now you've created a scar between the two of you. She's hurt, you're hurt, and now the project isn't done, or it's delayed, or it's hindered, or it becomes hard. And see, within the marriage relationship, when things are hard, the marriage suffers. And then that it doesn't blossom and it doesn't grow because you're filling it with poison on a constant basis. And so when you try to refuel from that position, there's nothing to refuel from because everything has been poisoned. So it's really important that you go into Proverbs 31 before you get married. Understand what it is the Bible is telling you about the characteristics that you're looking for in a woman. He doesn't tell you what physical attributes to look for. A woman is a woman. That's up to you. Everybody is entitled to their preferences. There's no problem with preferences. And it's funny because there's this movie. It's called Something New. Let me show you the clip.
So, I take it you don't do white guys?
I just happen to prefer black men. It's not a prejudice, it's a preference.
Sure. It's your preference to be prejudiced.
What about you?
Women are women. Some are poison, some are sweet.
Ever date a black girl?
All kinds of girls.
So you're a player.
No. I'm just a landscaper.
I love that clip because number one, the two are already struggling, as we know. The character, the female character, her name I believe is Kenya. Kenya is really struggling with the difference in appearance of the two of them. And so it really took her time to become okay with that difference between the two of them. But at the end of the movie, one of the things that happens is that she ends up having this amazing life. Because it's Hollywood, and that's how it ends. Doesn't mean there aren't problems. In every relationship, you're going to have problems. But here's the thing that I want you to understand. The wife of noble character is very specific. So here's the characteristics that she has. You can trust her. You don't have any need to go anyplace else because your heart really does rest safely in her, because you know that she's not out to do you harm. She does you good and not evil all the days of your life. She's a hard worker. She makes sure that her family has nutritious meals. She's an early riser. She's a property owner. She's healthy and exercises. She works late. She's a philanthropist, so she worries about the poor and the needy. She dresses her family for every season, so they're never cold in the winter, never overheating in the summer. She builds up her husband. She is strong and has honor. She has no fear for the future. She's kind and wise. She's active. Her children love her. She's amazing with dynamic qualities. She's loyal. She's honest. She's true. She loves the Father. She goes out. She finds materials, buys materials, assembles them into a product, and then sells that product. There's something, though, that the word says at the end about her that I found most interesting. And it's funny because I've read this verse 100 million times, probably literally, and I never noticed it before. This part I did, but not the second part. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. So, here's where it's very clear, and this is why I'm reading it to you. A lot of people appear to have favor in their life. Remember the gentleman I was telling you about earlier? He appears to have so much favor in his life, but the real telltale sign that there's something wrong or something off is that the favor he sees is extremely limited. He's the kind of guy who can go down the street and find $50, but he's not the kind of guy who can put together a massive event and then be able to fund that event based solely off of his relationship with the Father. Conversely, I've seen women who wear all the right clothes, say all the right things, but then when they go to do something, when they put their hand to that plow, for some reason, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Now, I want to be very careful with this, because there are times when it appears like God isn't coming through. And there are times when things are left bad as a result of that. But here's how that works. It's all about what God is teaching the individual, okay? And so one of the things that as a husband, your job is to do is to peel back the layers of your wife. So this wife of noble character didn't necessarily come fully equipped the way that the Bible's describing her. As you, her husband, pull back the layers of that onion, it causes her to bloom and to blossom and to grow, and things begin to happen, things that you didn't expect. You start to see characteristics emerge that you didn't know she had. These are all things that begin to show themselves throughout the process of the relationship. So the reason that the Bible tells you that favor is deceitful is because if you based your decision off of the level of favor that a person has, you're going to be making your decision based off of the wrong thing, because favor, the appearance of favor, can be faked. True favor is going to be consistent no matter what it is that she or he is doing. Favor is going to keep showing itself time after time after time after time. And that's the thing that I want you to understand. The Bible then says, and beauty is vain. We're all going to get older. We don't all look the same at 60 as we do at 16. Make sense? And so if you fall in love with someone based off of the way they look, then what that means is if they get into a car accident, if they get sick, if they get older, anything that happens, you're gonna stop caring about them. My favorite example of this is Hugh Hefner. I don't know a single one of you who doesn't know who Hugh Hefner is, but if there's one of you, Hugh Hefner was the owner of what's called the Playboy Mansion. He started this magazine called Playboy. And Playboy, of course, as most of you know, is a girly magazine, and we're just going to call it that. And so what would happen is that at the Playboy Mansion, he would always have these, 18 to 30-year-old women. But when they hit a certain age, it was time for them to leave the house because they had reached a point that they were too old. Here was Hugh in his, 70s, 80s, decided he was going to sell the mansion, but you had to have the agreement that he could stay in the house until the day he died. And so here he was with some 30-year-old woman at his side. That's when you start running into women who cannot be virtuous women. It doesn't mean that they won't grow into that. It just means that at that point, that's not who they are. A 30-year-old does not hook up with someone older than her father because she doesn't have money issues, where she doesn't want to have to do the hard work involved. She doesn't have, go through the gamut. You understand why a 30-year-old hooks up with a 70-year-old. I don't have to explain that to you, right? Beauty is vain. It will pass. So when she's not looking like she did at 20, are you still going to love her? Because if you're basing your marriage on the wrong things, you're picking the wrong kind of woman. And she will never fit the mold of what a virtuous woman actually is. But a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. If she fears the Lord, the rest of this stuff you never have to worry about. Because she's not worried about making you happy. She's worried about making her father happy. And in worrying about that, what then happens is that she can't help but go out of her way to always try to do right by you, because the person that she's answering to is higher than you're ever going to be. And that's a beautiful gift. It's one that many men take for granted when they have it and then cry themselves to sleep when they lose it because they didn't appreciate having it while they had it. Now, going back to our conversation about preference, here's what I want you to understand. In that clip that I showed you, there are people in this world today who would have issues because they have two different colors. But God has telltale signs in the world of whether or not something is an authorized activity. Are you following me? There are certain species, for example, if a donkey and a horse come together, they create a mule. What is the characteristic of that mule? It's sterile. Breeds of fruit fly, they come together, they crossbreed, their offspring are sterile. If something is not authorized, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're not going to be able to procreate or their offspring is going to be sterile. The fact that you can bring people of different colors together and they can still procreate and have children who can produce more children is your indication that skin color is not God's issue. There is nowhere in this word that he tells you, don't mess with people outside of your color. So anyone who tells you that is straight up lying to you. Some people have parents who say, don't you bring that person up into my house. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not talking from a place of concern for you. They're talking from a place of hatred in them. Just be aware of that. Now, that brings about a whole lot of other issues, but we're not going to talk about that in this segment, okay? That's something that you want to understand. Hatred is something that comes from people. It's not something that comes from God. Do not be unequally yoked with non-believers is not the same thing as being different colors. There's nothing in the Bible that tells you not to mix with colors. Color is a human issue. Following me? Now, you know what to look for. You know what the wife of noble character looks like. You know what characteristics she has. So, what's next? Everything you want begins with you. The biggest mistake in today's age is that people think that they're ready for something that they're not ready for. And so here's what I want you to understand. You go to a club, you get together with someone for that night, and something happens that is so unbelievably amazing, and you decide that you want to date this person. The problem is the basis of that foundation is sand. And what that means is when times get rough, you're not going to pull together. You're not going to come together. What's going to happen is that every time there's a struggle, you're going to pull apart. You're going to pull apart. You can't stand. The statistical probability of you meeting someone at a club, going to bed with them, and falling into a successful, lifelong relationship is slim to none. If you need any examples of that, look at that TV show. What's it called? The Bachelor, right? I think there's only one bachelor who found a woman, married the woman. I don't know if it was the Bachelor or the Bachelorette. I think it's Ryan and Trisha were their names or something like that. And they're years later, decades later, they're still together. It's not common that you're going to be able to do that, especially when you don't understand who you are, what you bring to the table, and what you want from the person that you're getting involved with. Because every relationship is going to involve give and take. It's going to involve sacrifice. It's going to involve, sometimes one person giving more than the other, although I don't often see that as regularly in marriages that are truly based on the father. Yes, you have emotional gas tanks. Yes, they're up and down. But usually when it's father-based, Jesus-based, the two of them have significantly greater levels of energy. So when they're at 50%, they're at the average person's 100%. I mean, it's really a beautiful experience. And so if you begin to understand who you are, what you want out of life, what is it that you want to accomplish, then you begin to know how to find the woman to complement you. Because that's what you're looking for. You're not necessarily looking for an opposite. You're not necessarily looking for, someone who's compatible and exactly like you. You're looking for someone who is able to complement you. And that when the two of you come together, each one of you feels like being with the other makes you better. You're better as a couple than you are individually. And so these are the things that we have to bring ourselves to the place of understanding. Now, every now and then you guys will meet a woman who is, she's a piece. And those are the types of women who will usually tell you, we're so great together. We're so wonderful together. But then they're constantly beating you down or something is, there's always just something. There's always some kind of drama, some kind of something. That's your indication that this is not the relationship for you. You will notice that quickly if the two of you are not physically involved. If you're not intimate, you'll notice it quick. If you are, you will miss the signs. And that's how people end up falling into these marriages where things are just really, really bad from the beginning, and they think it's going to get better because they get married. Marriage only exacerbates what is or isn't there. If it's bad in the beginning, it's going to get worse in marriage. If it's dynamic in the beginning, it's going to get better in marriage. And that's the thing that I want you to understand. How it starts is how it's going to end. If it starts badly, it's going to end badly. If it starts beautifully, it's going to end beautifully, which may or may not mean that it ends, right? Because it at some point, one or both of you may pass away. So however that looks to you is something that you guys will get to choose over the scope of your life together, or over the small time that you are together. So why does it begin with you first? When you can't have honest dialogue with another person, you can't build with that person, because the two of you are constantly on opposite sides of a discussion. She's coming from one direction, you're coming from another direction, and the two of you can't meet. You're on roads that are going in opposite directions or are running parallel to each other, and parallel roads never cross. You guys have to be kind of in an X, if you will. And it's not that the two of you are going to go in different directions. It's that at the point of that X, you get to choose a path to the right or to the left. And then when you get to the end of that path, you're at another X. So you're at a point. Are we going to go to the right? Or are we going to go to the left? You know, these are the things that happen, and why I'm saying look at it more like an X, because you're constantly choosing which path you're going to go. That's where you have to know yourself. Because here's the thing that's really hard for a lot of men to understand, because what's happening is we forget 2 Corinthians 5:7, which says, "For we walk by faith and not by sight." When we walk by faith, we're not using our eyes. We're watching with our spirit, and we're allowing our spirit to have input in where it is that we're going to go. Obviously, we're in prayer. Obviously, we're doing all of that, but it still doesn't change the fact that our Father talks to us through our spirit, not necessarily any other way, okay? Yes, he talks through the word, but your spirit still has to be able to receive what it is that's being said. Are you with me? When you're not willing to say, okay, these are my shortcomings, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm struggling with, and to be honest with yourself, when you're hiding from yourself, when you're doing all of that, you're keeping a world you're building your foundation on sand. It can't stand. You're building on lies. There's never going to be anything concrete about a lie. If it starts bad, it will end bad. There is no world in which you start bad and end good. It is either going to start good and end well, or start bad and end bad. And you've got to understand that. And there are so many people who try to find, I love it whenever I have this conversation with people, they always try to find ways to prove me wrong. Here's the irony. I didn't come up with the law. I didn't create it. You have 1,000 stories in the Bible. Each one of them that began bad ended badly. Now, we're not talking about from Jesus to a human, from a father to a human. We're talking about from human to human. Starts bad, ends bad. Starts good, ends good. You know, Ahab and Jezebel started bad, ended bad. It's the way that it goes. Saul had problems when he became the king. He was already kind of arrogant. It ended badly for him. If you start bad, you're going to end badly, period. That's why keeping it in your pants in the beginning is so important. Listen, you don't have to keep it in your pants forever. At some point, you all are going to get married. Or you're going to find out that the two of you don't work, and you're going to be thankful that you didn't do anything. Trust me, you will always find out that you are thankful that you didn't do anything, because now you don't have to know what could have been. You with me? I think for today, we're going to stop there. And then next week, we will pick up where we left off and move you forward into the next section of finding the right one. All right? If you love this video, if you like this video, click the like button, subscribe, help us get it out on YouTube by interacting. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. If we don't get back to you in the comments, we will make another video to get back to you, and we will keep it going from there. I can't wait to see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful day.